Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I will be featuring a game played between Israel Horowitz and Feliks Kibbermann. In this game, White gains a lot of time in the opening and creates a completely devastating attack against Black. So without further ado, let's get right into the game. The game started off with e4, d5, going into a Scandinavian. E takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, queen a5, d4, knight f6, knight f3, bishop g4, h3, bishop h5, g4, bishop g6, and knight to e5. So for those who don't play e4 or just don't know, they may think that these two pawn moves weaken the king side a little bit, and yes, that is true, but this knight on e5 more than compensates for that. It's extremely strong on this position, attacking both f7, and sometimes might want to capture this bishop. He can go to c4 to attack the queen, or the bishop can go to c4 to attack this f7 pawn. This knight on e5 more than fully compensates for these h3, g4 pawn moves. So the game continued c6. Now this is not the main line. e6 is the main line, and if White tries to play something like knight c4 to attack the queen, the thing is queen to a6. And you may think the queen is very dangerously placed because this bishop is kind of eyeing it, and wherever White moves this knight, the queen will be under attack. The thing is, there are no useful spots for the knight to go. If you try something like knight to d6, which attacks the king and queen, the thing is, Black can solve both of these problems by playing the move queen takes d6. So e6 was the main line, but instead the move c6 was played. So now knight c4 was played to attack the queen, and queen to c7. I believe this is an error, and the move queen to d8 should be played. And by the way, for those of you wondering, queen to a6 no longer works in this position, because White can play knight to d6, because now this pawn gets in the way of the queen capturing the knight. So now Black will lose the queen. So queen c7 was played, and this queen is kind of awkwardly placed here, and White takes advantage of this by playing the move queen to f3, which basically intends to hit the queen one more time with bishop f4 and develop another piece. Now, for those of you looking at the position, you guys probably see that c2 is under attack, and the queen just left the pawn. And you guys are right, Black can capture the pawn, but White took this into consideration. In fact, Black did capture the pawn in the game. Bishop f4 was played, gaining a tempo on the queen, and queen to d8. And now White has an excellent move here, which regains the pawn and grants him a completely winning position. I would like you to pause the video here and see if you can find it. The move is queen to e2. A backward move, yes, but also a very powerful one. This move does two things. First things first, it attacks the bishop. Black needs to deal with this threat first. The second thing it does is a little more subtle, but once you start evaluating the position and calculating, you'll see the second intention of this move, and that is that it pins this e-pawn. And you'll see why this is useful. So Black obviously has to deal with his bishop first and plays bishop to g6. And now the great move, knight to d6, taking advantage of the fact that with White's last move, this e-pawn was pinned. So now king d7 is kind of forced, because obviously you don't want to give up your queen with queen takes d6, because it's protected by the bishop. And now White can regain his pawn by playing knight takes b7. So if you guys go back into the position after bishop f4, you guys might be wondering, why can't I play queen to d7? I mean, this move protects b7, right? So after variation, White will not be able to regain his pawn. And that's true. But White has another continuation here that's very strong. That is rook c1. After bishop g6, you have this annoying move to deal with, d5. And after c takes d5, you have this annoying move to deal with. After queen e6, you have this, which threatens knight to c7, so knight a6 is obviously forced. But then you have this to deal with. Knight to d4, attacking the queen. After something like queen b6, you have this to deal with. So Black is basically forced to move his king and bishop e3. And obvious compensation for White here. Obvious. Even though you're down 2 pawns, White has a completely crushing position because every single one of his pieces are very well placed and very active, while Black's king is like stuck in the middle of the board. Instead, queen d8 was played. We've already gone through this. Queen e2, bishop g6, knight to d6, king d7, and knight takes b7. And now queen b6 was played, and knight c5. King c8, and if we take a moment to evaluate this position here, we can see that it's equal material, so white's not even down a pawn anymore. But the problem is black's king. Black's king is severely misplaced and is in the middle of the board. So he will be under attack for basically the entire game. So this is why white's position is completely winning. So bishop g2, excellent move, getting the last minor piece into the game where it can strike along this long diagonal. e6 was played, castles, and knight to d5. Now an amazing move here, knight takes d5. So basically what this does is clears the way of the c file, and after something like c takes d5, which was played in the game, white can play rook c1 and place a rook against black's king. Instead, if you try to close the c file down with e takes d5 instead, you still have rook c1 to deal with, because this rook is still very powerfully placed, and in some lines, white is threatening to play bishop takes d5. So this is still a very bad position for black. So c takes d5 was played in the game, rook a c1, king d8, and now an amazing move, bishop to g5. And now black basically has 3 responses here. All of them are very bad. In the game, black played bishop to e7, which was met by bishop takes e7, king takes e7, and bishop d5. Instead, if you try something like a king e8, the problem is bishop takes d5, taking advantage of the fact that the e-pawn is pinned, and black's completely lost here. Instead, if you try f6, the thing is knight takes e6 check. So now black doesn't have the option to capture white's bishop on g5 because he's in check. So bishop e7 was played, bishop takes e7, king takes e7, and bishop takes d5. And now this rook on a8 is trapped. If you try knight c6, the problem is knight takes e6 is a winning sacrifice for white and completely crushing. So instead knight d7 was played, giving up the exchange, but at this point the game is completely over. Knight takes d7, king takes d7, rook f1, queen b7, and now an amazing move, d5, opening up more lines against the king. E takes d5, and now I would like you to pause the video and find the finishing move, queen e5. d5 will fall, and the game will be lost for black. I hope this game demonstrates to you how effective it can be to just gain some time and create a completely devastating attack against your opponents. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. Goodbye.